What's wrong with world music? On what grounds do we describe music that breaks with Western traditions? Does the simple label world music suffice? Unsurprisingly, this term was not popularized by so-called world musicians. Rather, like much of the language we use to describe music, it was the creation of profit-minded record label executives. In 1987, industry tycoons were looking to capitalize on the success of Paul Simon's South African-influenced Graceland to start selling more music by African artists to Western audiences. They settled on world music as a broad marketing term to denote music not originating from Europe or North America. In many ways, the top-down nature of this term's inception and its formulation in the absence of any actual musicians is reflective of its problems. World music casts an otherness upon the music it encompasses, demarcating it solely by the fact that it's not Western, rather than what it sounds like or how it was composed. It's clear to any listener that the Brazilian Tropicalia music of Caetano Veloso bears no more, and arguably much less, relation to North Indian classical music by Ravi Shankar than it does to Western pop or rock music. To lump the two artists under one bracket ensures that the designation of world music is defined by its proximity to our narrow conception of Western music. This reinforces a Western hegemony that casts foreign art and culture as less highbrow or unsophisticated. This has pervaded the way we engage with art throughout history, both in terms of how it is marketed and how consumers perceive it. Such a characterization fails to grant non-Western artists the individuality they deserve. When it comes to Western artists, entertainment media is more than willing to hyper-taxonomize, creating ever more specific genre labels to describe the next progressive metal-influenced mathcore band or post-punk revival act. Pigeonholing artists into overly narrow labels can itself be unhelpful, but this tendency of music journalists highlights that they can be specific in their descriptions of artists when they actually make an effort. Identifying the specific genre of a foreign artist operates as a basic courtesy that would crucially enable such artists to forge their own musical identity distinct from their nationality. Besides the lack of respect the term world music affords artists, the designation lacks any utility for listeners. At their best, genre labels help differentiate between different kinds of music, describing how an artist sounds or the movement they belong to so that listeners can gravitate towards music they are more likely to enjoy. A broad strokes term like world music fails because it reveals so little about the fundamental basis of music, how it sounds. What types of instruments does an artist compose with? What kinds of harmonies do they employ? What lyrical themes do they explore? Labeling an album as world music does nothing to answer any of these questions. The perniciousness of this term is symptomatic of one of Western music media's major failures: it can't challenge the premises on which its viewpoints rest. Panels for music awards, such as the Grammys, regularly shoehorn black artists' musical achievements into the category of rap, or until recently, urban music, in spite of music often not fitting into those characterizations. Meanwhile, the Golden Globes critic panel decided to place Minari, 2020, into its foreign film category due to its dialogue being predominantly in Korean, despite the American-produced film's central tenet being the promise of the American dream to U.S. immigrants. These examples demonstrate how the merits of the works of non-Western artists and people of color are routinely conceived of through a white-centric viewpoint. Ultimately, what world music gets wrong is that, for its artists, world music is just music. Labeling music in binary terms based on its Western or non-Western origin is not just disrespectful, it's bad music journalism. Term world music is dead. Artists, record labels and even this month's WOMAD Festival agree that the term is outdated. Is there a better way to market music from across the globe? Ask most musicians what genre they play and you'll likely get a prickly response. As one well-known, and slightly tipsy, jazz musician once told me, if you all stopped obsessing about me playing jazz, maybe I would be playing festival stages rather than tiny clubs by now. But while there have been meandering debates about jazz during its long history, another genre has become far more contentious in recent years: world music. Dreamed up in a London pub in 1987 by DJs, record producers and music writers, it was conceived as a marketing term for the greater visibility of newly popularized African bands, following the success of Paul Simon's Johannesburg-recorded Graceland the year before. It was all geared to record shops. That was the only thing we were thinking about, DJ Charlie Gillett, one of the pubgoers, told The Guardian in 2004. The group raised £3,500 from 11 independent labels to begin marketing world music to record stores. It was the most cost-effective thing you could imagine, said record producer Joe Boyd. Pound 500 and you get a whole genre, and a whole section of record stores today. Founders of the term provided vague justifications for lumping together anything that wasn't deemed to be from a European or American tradition, looking at what artists do rather than what they sound like, as editor of Fruits magazine Ian Anderson said. The World of Music, Arts and Dance Festival, aka WOMAD, which was founded 7 years before the term gained prominence, similarly used it as a catch-all for its roster of international artists. There were no other festivals like ours at the time, artistic programmer Paula Henderson says. We weren't pop or rock, so we were happy to advertise it as World when we began. But the term soon faced opposition. Talking Heads frontman David Byrne founded the label Lawaka Bop, which has released artists who might be placed in the world category, including William Onyeabor and Susanna Baca. In 1999, he wrote a scathing op-ed in the New York Times called I Hate World Music, in which he argued that listening to music from other cultures, letting it in, allows for it to change our worldview and to reduce what was once exotic into part of ourselves. World music meant the opposite, a distancing between us and them. It's a none too subtle way of reasserting the hegemony of Western pop culture, Byrne wrote. It ghettoises most of the world's music. A bold and audacious move, white man. The current president of Lawaka Bop, Yael Ivlev, says, we always considered it a pop music label. When people said we were a world music label, we wanted to crawl into a hole. Instead of signifying a certain emotional honesty, it is a marketing rubric. A rubric that is seemingly none too successful either. The world category falls at the bottom of year-end streaming and sales figures lists, accounting for 0.8% of album sales in the US and 1.6% of total streams in 2018. So why has the term persisted? Strut Records manager Quentin Scott, who releases a range of artists, including soul singer Patrice Rushen, spiritual jazz icon Sun Ra and Son Kuti, son of Afrobeat pioneer Fela, says, as labels we need to guide buyers to the right place to find the music as quickly as possible, especially in the chaotic digital marketplace. For that reason, a general term or genre still does work as an endpoint for music buyers. Yet as a general term, he admits, it does feel dated. Musicians have successfully cross-pollinated styles much more in recent years, to complicate matters further, so it could be changed to something that sounds more contemporary. But I don't think there can ever be a catch-all phrase that avoids overgeneralization. As WOMAD's Henderson puts it, if the consumer wants to class it as world music, as long as they buy the ticket or the music, that's fine by me. Other industry heads are less equivocal. It's the antithesis of art, says Pete Buckingham, founder of the independent label On the Corner. At its best, it's bad culture, dialed down and made safe for a generic, mostly Western consumer as imagined by a marketing department. At worst, the term is out-and-out racist. For Buckingham, world must be abolished and the industry should lead the way. When the term is so flawed and ideologically problematic, there is no alternative. The musicians who have found themselves in the world record bins largely agree. Indian jazz drummer and producer Surati Korwar finds the term lazy. It only helps reinforce the narrative that other people's music is less evolved and important than your own and doesn't deserve a more nuanced approach, he says. Multi-million-selling Senegalese musician Youssou N'Dour believes the label has served its purpose and can only now be applied to collaborations that span across the globe, geographically taking in the world through their mixture of cultural traditions. For Réunion Island musician Jeremy Labelle, the initial labeling of his amorphous electronic music as world was enticing, allowing him to broaden his appeal to a network of world music festivals and events. But I quickly understood that this label was very dangerous, especially for music like mine that seeks to create bridges between aesthetics, he says. Congolese funk band Bantu Mentale encountered similar issues. Their solution? Abolish all generic descriptors, since categorization equals discrimination. It is a question of ethnicity as much as one of perceived authenticity and category. London-based trio Volaville center their work around the West African xylophone, the Jill, which bandleader Bex Birch learned when she spent 3 years with the Dagaba people in Ghana. Birch hails from Yorkshire and the other members of Volaville are white. I've had world music industry people say my band does not fit the world genre because I'm not African, she says, raising the issue of cultural appropriation. The sad fact is that musicians from African countries are still refused visas and have much less access to the music industry. So, the white savior tries to bring the black or brown musicians from a village to a studio or festival stage and profits from them. The fact I'm told I need a black member of my band to qualify is another example of tokenism and the blatant exoticizing of black skin. In 2018, WOMAD experienced visa denials for its acts, with at least 3 having to cancel appearances, yet Henderson disagrees with the white savior term. Visas are so expensive and the Home Office can be so prohibitive when it comes to bringing artists from other countries here, she says. Often, it's only with the help of Western festival organizers that we can mitigate the denials, otherwise an act will pay £6,000 for a visa, be denied, and never see that money or a potential new audience again. We always make sure our artists are paid fairly and aren't exploited. My first experience of world music went unnoticed. It was the Bollywood songs that played through our kitchen radio and that my grandma listened to religiously. It was the devotional music I heard at temple, and perhaps even the reggae records my mom put on. To me, this was simply music, to be included with the other formative records and artists of my childhood, Motown, hip-hop, jazz. When The Guardian began its world music coverage, it was a reflection of a music industry coming to terms with a new, globalized landscape, one not only confined to the recesses of the record store. Now, with the internet at our fingertips and streaming services providing endless hours of musical discovery, the world has reached far beyond the meaning of world music. The Guardian has therefore ceased using this tag on its articles. Only a relevant genre tag such as pop and rock, dance music, and metal will be used. Rest assured that we are more committed than ever to telling the stories of music around the world, be it disco divas from India, techno from Uganda, reinventions of classical Korean instrumentation, or political Turkish psych rock. Founders who have been plagued by catch-all terms. Yet, in the glorious tyranny of endless internet-fueled musical choice, marginalized music still needs championing and signposting in the West. The term world music has become toxic, so a new word for this monthly planet-spanning roundup, however reductive, is needed. As Vula Veals Birch says, is world helpful? Musically, no, but as a genre to champion and curate this fantastic world of music, sure. For its latest edition, WOMAD is also moving on from the term, simply calling itself the World's Festival. We understand world music is ghettoizing for a lot of the artists, festival director Chris Smith says. We're respectful of the term because it's our heritage, but we need to evolve it because the music has evolved. All that matters is championing new music for people to hear and enjoy. We don't want these artists to be held back by genre, we want to see them at Glastonbury and beyond. We're international, world, whatever you want to call it, it's just music.